So thank you for joining for today's Fireside Chat. Myself, Mahesh Arji, and happy to welcome you all. And thank you for taking time on this working day, though. And this is a Fireside discussion on getting the data governance right. And today's Fireside Chat is being hosted by Marlabs, who's a digital award-winning solution provider. And myself, to introduce myself, I have been in the IT space for almost more than 15 years. Right now, I'm heading the data engineering practice for Marlabs, and experienced in doing consulting and management delivery for global 100 to 500 Fortune 500 companies, specialized in data warehouse, big data, business intelligence, and analytics programs from initiation to transition. We are very excited to have three major senior leaders who have successfully implemented their data governance initiative at large US organizations. They will share with us their thoughts on getting the most value out of the data. Let me introduce the panelists. Honestly, it is very short description about them. We'll do a best with them. Start with Abraham George. He's a previous CIO, Columbus State University. Abraham is an innovative IT leader and strategist with almost more than 3 decades of experience in IT services. As a vice president of IT and chief information officer, he led several digital transformation programs, including a university-wide data analytics program. He served also as a chair of Georgia's Data Governance Advisory Council for more than a couple of years. Welcome, Abraham.
Thank you.
Following by Abraham, we have Tom. He is a professor emeritus, previous provost, and vice president for academic affairs, Columbus State University. Tom is a proven educational leader and administrator, having served as a senior vice president for academic affairs and interim president for Columbus State University. He played a vital role in launching the Columbus State's first doctoral degree program and degree IN3, which is an innovative communication degree program funded by Gates Foundation. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, man.
And with Tom, we have Greg Scutch. He's a previous chief data officer and analytics officer. Greg is a data science and a data strategy leader with over more than 2 decades of experience in higher education. And very recently, in like past decade, he has worked as a chief data officer and chief analytics officer with 2 of the largest education institutes in the US. He's a data person and completely committed in maximizing the efficiency and bettering the business solutions through data frameworks and business analytics. And for the audience, this is a Fireside Chat discussion. We'll be exchanging our conversations and thoughts. And for the audience, you can use a Q&A tab for any questions you might have, and we'll be taking those all questions at the end of the event. And again, thanks for your time, and welcome you all on board. To start with this Fireside Chat, we thought we'll keep the interaction engaging, and we'll start with a poll question first. And maybe you might see a poll question right now on your screen. Please make an appropriate selection as per your scenario, so that it will help us know the audience better. We'll give a couple of minutes for all of attendees to take part in this poll. This poll is about at what stage is the data governance program at your organizations currently? Almost there. Hope everybody is participating there. Okay. All right. So we got the poll results, and majority of the organizations say that they're still at the planning stage, in the early stage of having the researching still. And that's good to know, and that encourages the whole discussion. Thank you. And to start with our Fireside Chat, maybe we'll begin with Tom. So what is your guidance, Tom, on making the right data governance right to get the right data out of the organization's information?
Well, Mahesh, the problem with data is that there's almost an infinite amount of it. So when you're developing a data governance process, you have to think, okay, what kinds of data are we actually going to pull from our data warehouse, from the internet, from all the wide array of sources? And one way to look at that is to to look at what are the business imperatives. What are those things that apply to the very mission of the business? When we initially got into data governance back around 2010, 2011 at Columbus State University, we were looking at imperatives for university, what Greg Schultz might call a clinical business. We're an education business, and we looked at what things apply directly to our mission. And we looked at some things that were maybe that were pertinent to short-term goals, but also those that were pertinent to long-term goals. So for a university, let's say, we wanted to look at those things that applied to making an education more affordable for students, and actually finding and recruiting students to come to the institution. The second thing we wanted to look at was completability. In other words, graduation. What things contributed to students actually completing the program, staying with us first, because that made sure that we were actually creating a profit for the institution that could be put back in the program. And then finally, we looked at employability. So for a business, what might be equivalent kinds of things that are mission or business imperatives would be such things as bottom line. That's sort of a short time initiative. What contributes to profitability right now? Second, what develops market share? What is our market share? Why do people buy our product? And how can we get more people to buy a product? That's more of an intermediate imperative. And then ultimately, the idea of service. How can we improve service every single day? What are the little things we can do to improve? Because in order to ensure long-term viability and ultimately in this climate, survivability, we have to constantly make sure we improve the service we provide. It's interesting. I just listened to a podcast that was a British physicist talking about business improvement. And critical to the business improvement, we're looking at those little things that we can improve every day to get better. How do we get better every day? So first, my perspective on data governance is let's look at data we can collect that will apply to those mission imperatives.
Great. Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. I can't agree more. The power of driving the strategic business imperatives with enterprise data strategy is critical to the success of the businesses. I just remember how I'm just remembering how we work along back when we were working on the data analytics project, reminiscing about that, working with Tom as the vice president, and then working with the president and the senior executives actually led the conversation about the project, about the initiative through collaboration. They set the example, and it really made easy for me to piggyback on that engagement trail to lead the enterprise analytics project as a CIO. Leadership certainly highlighted major initiatives to the organization and also about the critical nature and strategic importance of it to the entire organization. The data analytic projects will enable to measure performance of your business units, which brings your data to the surface. And some may think this is their data and is private to them, and sometimes I personally seen they become defensive. They may, because they don't know, they may think a little bit personal. This is my data, why they are looking at what they want to do with it. This is natural, and I learned this is natural to happen to while we do a major project, because they don't know the power and value of data. Fortunately, in our institution, the inclusive approach the president, the vice presidents, starting from the top down to including the lowest member of the enterprise, helped to build trust among stakeholders in data analytic and its adoption. To me, that was a secret of our success in laying the foundation of the data warehouse project and the data analytics services, and leading to the data governance foundation. So by doing this in a collaborative way, leadership will earn the trust of stakeholders and employees, and that led to the effective use of data. So that to me, that inclusive approach is so important. You know, I'm not minimizing the technical power of the project, but collaborative approach, and that's the way we can succeed in implementing this.
Great.
Thank you.
You're on mute. Craig.
Thanks, Tom and Abram. I really like the direction you are going looking at things. Tom, you're talking about the bottom line imperative, that market share imperative, and that the service imperative. And Abraham, you're talking about trust, and those are huge in how we handle data and the use of data. I come from a perspective of a chief data officer or chief analytics officer, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. But I did want to kind of just clarify again, education is a clinical line of business like healthcare. And we develop students for the workforce and society. We develop both the skills and the knowledge through clinical applications like courses and other methods. As we look at data from a wider perspective, we use data for our businesses, whether clinical like education or as a product or as a service, towards meeting our goals and meeting our mission. And that's what we're really looking for data governance to do. So as we do that, we'll be working with you to improve your business through your data governance as we go along today, and looking forward to talking more about that.
Absolutely. So my view on this is in order to have efficient data governance, there are some standard practices. We being a active member of DAMA and TDWI and continuously improving on the frameworks, we have established a framework which are repeatable and being used in plenty of our customers. And we figured out the organizations who doesn't have a data governance in place, or maybe who treats a data governance as a project, they have a least output of their data as a trust, as a more efficient value than the others. So it's always advised to have a data governance to yield more out of the data. Those are good points. Thank you. And to move on, this is a very interesting point there now. Greg, you being a CDO, how's this scenario sounds like? Having a data rich but information poor. How do you think the organizations can get best out of the information or the data what they already have it?
Okay, yes, and you start from there as the role as a chief data officer, chief analytics officer. You want to make sure that your asset of the data is best utilized, while then also deterring the risk. So you want to utilize it and deter risk. The role brings a central focus for data to a company that's both or can fit either within the functional department or within the technical department. So as a chief data officer, I want to maximize the use of data to increase the bottom line. And then I want to reduce the risk to be compliant and avoid security and privacy breaches. I also want to improve the organization products and services long term. So we are meeting the business goals through the use of data. 3 reasons why data is becoming so important is it's ubiquitous and so much around us, and we need it to improve our businesses. A second one is that data helps us see clearly, and it keeps us from getting caught up in feelings and political issues and bureaucracy. And then thirdly, the world that we're living in is a digital world. And we've seen businesses go digital, and more our businesses are going that direction. So what we want to do is we want to have data governance be an enabler of our bottom line, of our goals, and of our mission. And we know we've experienced this. Most people were saying that they're not at the mature stage of data governance. We've seen where data governance can slow business down and not actually be an enabler. So we want to talk a bit about how data governance can enable your business to best maximize your data. Some of the solutions that we can make are to find a data czar or somebody who's in charge, one person who's charged. That's not a necessarily need. There's not a mission that you have to have a chief data officer or a chief analytics officer or one person to be in charge of that. Data governance can help there too. So you need to figure that out, how your business needs to work. But as we mature our data governance, then we can help to make the data move more smoothly, make decisions on it better, and also to avoid risk. And I want to ask you one question. Is data governance helping your mission and goals, or is it adding to your bureaucracy? We've got to make business work better.
Right.
And so we have to make using data governance and use data governance smartly.
Great point.
Thank you, Greg. I like your idea about data czar. To me, a data czar is like a referee to a match or a sheriff in a town. It sounds funny, but it is really true. It really applicable to avoid some of the concerns, observations that Greg mentioned. The person, data czar, stays very close and familiar with corporate, state, and federal data reporting guidelines or compliance requirements, as well as he or she understand the importance of data accuracy at all levels. We know the saying, resources follow data, refereed, arbitrated by data czar. And I think Greg was a chief data officer, so data czar also is the chief data officer. Also, the most important person who understand the value of data is data czar, both technical side as also on the people side. It's those who worked in the military understand when the colonel is approached by two sergeants with reports that has data, colonel makes the final call because he knows the data, its accuracy, and who is the audience. And so it really makes such a important role. The data czar or chief data officer makes an important role to lead data governance as part of the data implementation or data analytics projects, any data analytics project. And I was reading around 60% companies use established data validation and testing on a regular basis. Many developments have resulted from the use of AI and machine learning, and many more are to come. Data intelligence or business intelligence is one of those developments. When you combine AI and machine learning, provides organization with the ability to analyze massive data sets much more reliably and noticeably faster. And Greg mentioned, data is like ubiquitous right now, everywhere. Using data intelligence, organizations have the ability to adapt more quickly to industry needs. And there are several examples. If time permits, towards the end, I'd like to share a few examples. Thank you.
Sure.
So one of the things we talked about earlier, Abraham, was the idea that there's so much data, and you were just talking about it being ubiquitous, being everywhere. The second thing is that in a business or any kind of entity where the data governance is emerging or being planned, typically every part of the operation has their own data. And so your point about having a data czar, someone has to come up and say, well, what the data that meets the mission we're trying to achieve here in terms of profitability or bottom line or market share, whatever, it's got to be this. So we're going to talk a little bit about collaboration, how you get there so the data czar doesn't have such a huge job to do and that everyone understands the job of the data czar. But ultimately, businesses, any kind of organization where they are so siloed that everyone is bringing their own language to the table, it really hampers communication. So we've got to get that communication right. And those will be some of the things we'll talk about when we talk later about collaboration, right?
Absolutely. Those are the really good points. You highlighted about data czars, and that prompted me to bring up one of the examples, or maybe a use case what we did. We were to do a data strategy for the customer who were into situation, the one that we started with. They had data accumulated for a number of years, invested a lot of money on the analytics and all whatnot under the hood for data. And they had 65,000 units, devices, and laptops and the systems which are generating data, but they were not having conclusions on where can I use this data. So they wanted to do a data strategy, but we recommended to have data governance in place along with the strategy, so that you always have a progression in order to reduce the dark data and increase your data efficiency. And that went really well. So I thought that might be very essential. And the data are having this goal and collaboration with his peers, and he should execute this as a program then rather than a project. I agree. That's a really good point. Thank you there. So moving on to the next point, for the audience, if you have any relevant questions regarding to that, please post your questions. We will be taking up those questions at the end, as we mentioned. Thank you. And to moving on, next is another interesting point. So as the AI being more a real scenario for most of the organizations, it's always obedient that you have more data to make AI more accurate. But at times the organizations might have to rely on the external data also. So Abraham, how does data governance plays in a role when the data is being acquired from external sources too?
My great questions. We really must look at the challenges associated with AI and AI ethics. And as we look around, if you look around our nation, or globally, nationally or globally, you'll see everywhere the conversation about different kind of news, how you identify news. We hear about common terminology about fake news and things like that. It's the power of AI and the AI ethics is so important and so relevant to equally in the organizations and companies. According to IBM research, organizations have to overcome data issue. 60% of organizations are challenged in managing data quality.
Yep.
Then second issue is talent. 62% of organizations are challenged to acquire talent to deliver AI capabilities. And third issue is trust. 65% of organizations need to develop a framework and approach for human review of analytics, AI decisions, and actions. So for building trust in AI and AI algorithms, organizations and businesses require data governance standards and framework. This is fundamental to building trust around data and AI. That we spoke about data czar. That under his leadership or her leadership, the data czar or chief data officer, along with the data stewards and functional champions of the organizations, will communicate and will make sure the data is being validated.
Yep.
Data model and data algorithm is tested and validated on a regular basis. And when I say that, an example comes to my mind is I was helping a university that has an annual research funding of roughly around 38 to $40 million in research.
Mm-hmm.
The Office of Vice President Research has a mission to promote research and scholarly activities among faculties, and because that that promote that helps to bring more research dollars to the campus, enabling the first time young faculties or junior faculties with targeted training and mentoring is so critical to the success of every research proposal they write and respond. So it was important during the onboarding process as they bring new PhD for faculty as faculties. The system they design they have a system which is designed intelligently to match the new faculties with experienced senior faculties or professors as mentors, advisors, and some consultants along the way, and must be done accurately based on these individuals' profiles. So there is a lot of data that they collect on the system from all these individuals, and in addition to all these different proposals that comes from various entities like National Science Foundation, Department of Defense, or Department of Education, Department of Energy. So every organization gives opportunity for funding, and so it is so important. When I looked at, I found out that they had issues with their data is not matching, or some person is matched with a wrong person. So they asked me, hey Abraham, what could be going wrong here? So I had the opportunity to look at their database, and I before even got to there, I found out that their only objective is to make things work, but they have no idea about how these matching works and how important to maintain the quality of data from the data collection and data entry, and making sure it is properly saved in the right places. So right. That matching, there was so many matching errors, and then lack of data governance. Honestly, I don't want to blame them, but they didn't know data governance framework. And so without a data governance framework, they were shooting in the dark and trying to achieve a major objective, but they couldn't. So I had to help them, work with them about an understanding, hey, this is your entire process will only work if you have the accurate data from everywhere and marked and entered properly. See, so therefore, outcomes of every test and validation not only depends on the data governance validation process, but also points to the basic data entry sources, and also from the professional side. These steps are adopted through enterprise data governance training and awareness through continuous process improvement. To conclude, a matured and dynamic data governance framework will help build trust in data analytics, improve data accuracy, data security, reduce data management costs, allow better decision making and communication. Also, it prepares and enables the adoption and implementation of AI. Thank you.
Great. Hey, Rev, I really like that. I like the idea of not shooting in the dark, and your approach to data and looking at it from artificial intelligence point of view as well. As I stated before, the data governance should be impacting your business mission and your goals, your bottom line, decreasing your risk, improving your service, and then adding to that long-term strategy. So as we look at this, I want to talk more about differences in the areas of data governance later, but with Abraham's comments, I want to say there are a lot of tools out there for data governance and data management.
Yeah.
What I want you to think about and look at for your own business is you as the business need to rule the tool. This means that you decide what your minimal viable needs are. You decide what tools you want to put in place, and you decide when tools change. And this may take some work, but putting those processes in place will make sure that you are being efficient in meeting your clients' needs, as opposed to meeting the tools needs. So again, we're meeting the bottom line mission and the goals is what we're looking at. And I've built a number of data warehouses. The last one I was at, we were in our third round of building a data warehouse with 350 student fields, 250 human resource fields, and 200 financial fields. And it was, again, our third chance at this, so we had to get it right. And we asked the operations research folks who had been those 1960s folks. So if you're, I'm going to pause for saying, if you think 1960s, you're thinking Space Odyssey 2001. Well, Space Odyssey is here, and HAL can make decisions as Abraham was talking about. So coming back to looking at the decisions that are being made across those 27 universities, we had to get this right, and we had to make sure the operations research group had access, had data quality, and then also had data governance. And those are three things we asked for, and we delivered those things. But things are changing fast, even the vision of a data warehouse and what is a data warehouse, data lakes, data this, data that, data streams, wherever you are with that, there's lots of change. And in that change is also machine learning and AI, and we need to be ready for that change, and data governance is a way to do that.
Yes, yes. Change is changing. Yes, it's very, very frequent and very often. Yes. Yeah. So in that case, I'm curious about this point, which I believe the audience might also have that thought. So I'm just reshuffling the questions though. So what do you think, Abraham, here? Will the data governance in that case should be a proactive program, or should it be a reactive program to the situation?
Mahesh, it's an easy answer for me. Without any doubt, I will say data governance must be done proactively. And I'm speaking from my experience. Again, I had an eye-opening experience that helped me to get data governance started in the right way. It was a reactive learning experience in my CIO journey. It's coincident. In 2010, I had the opportunity to lead the enterprise data warehouse and analytics initiative for the university as a CIO and one who loved emerging technologies or cool technologies, you would say, some people would say. I was focused on getting a great system developed and wanted to go live so fast and to impress everybody. I was excited about the cool factor in data warehouse and the DBI, the dashboards, bringing to the users. And of course, I just want to mention, since Tom and Greg spoke about this, business imperatives. Business imperatives is such an important thing for university. Is like Tom mentioned, affordability. The graduation and also employability. And so when you look at business also, that there is business imperatives, bottom line, improving bottom line, customer satisfaction, all that is important. So when we were developing my first goal was to develop a proof of concept under 3 months duration, with but a broad data validation and testing was not formalized at that time, because I was not fully aware of it. When the proof of concept was thought, when the proof of concept was thought ahead, it would have been a good journey. In one of our proof of concept presentation, after 3 months, after we developed it, I was asked by one of the executives the data accuracy of the data, and what I did was I tried to defend the data instead of being sensitive to the individual's question. Also, I should have involved data scientists to answer the question in the best way possible. So instead of taking that question myself, and without thinking that the question's sensitivity, I actually tried to defend, because I thought I own everything. without realizing I'm an IT executive or I'm an IT person. My only goal is to deliver what I promised or what was decided. So, and the sad thing is, I learned from there is you as an IT executive don't have to defend. You need to have a data expert like a data czar or chief data officer. You should be dodging that question to that individual. That is the right person to answer that question. And so I learned that lesson. At the time, we did not have any written data dictionary and definitions developed or even any tools properly. It was an opportunity to learn the importance of data governance, and that it struck me since then. And that's how I focused on. Uh, that experience led me to include our president and executives, which facilitated and brought the stakeholders for a collaborative discussion that led to the formation of Data Governance Council. Those meetings and discussions led to the realization that we needed a formal data governance platform for quick and timely communication on data among data stewards and data owners and functional users. Hope that was helpful.
Great. That's really
Yes, that's interesting. I'm a big fan of what you've done with data, Abraham. I've seen what you do increase the bottom line for higher ed. There were a couple of portals you put together that have helped. One was on advising, and the advising kept students and graduated students, and that leads to the bottom line of dollars for higher ed, because we get our appropriation dollars from the state, and we also get tuition dollars for the students, as well as improving what our universities do. And so that's very good. And then you've also worked with sponsored research and developing a portal using that data as well in order to improve research, which is another place that the university does business and gets dollars. So as a chief data officer, from that perspective, you're building that data fabric and that data platform for these services. One of the things I want to say here real quickly is that data are owned by the business, and then IT owns the tools. This makes both players very important. And additionally, as Tom has already talked about, the data are not owned by only one department, but by many departments, many divisions, even suppliers, which again requires sharing. So as we talk through things more, I want to get to the idea that data governance helps brings all these together, and again, helps us to meet our goals and meet our mission.
that's right.
Getting great. One of those goals has got to be what are the hidden vulnerabilities for our institution, our organization. You know, a lot of times we gather data that we already know is out there, and a lot of times when we start sharing data, we share all the data that makes us look good. It's a little bit like when you're standing in front of a mirror, you suck in your stomach and you make sure your hair is combed and you look great, and you feel real good when you walk out. But then later you see a picture of yourself and you go, who is that masked man? I don't know him. And a lot of times we're not looking at the data that shows us with our vulnerabilities and all. That's very important. The things that sink organizations are not those things they already know about. They're the things they don't know about. So one thing I think has to happen with a proactive approach, if that's the approach you're taking, is that you call everybody together, all the department heads, all the senior leadership, and have that honest discussion. What don't we know about that's out there that could jump up and bite us, especially in a climate that's changing? And that's not the end of it. Department heads need to go back to the people they work with and ask them the same questions. And you know, you're going to find out those folks out in the field doing the work are going to really be your eyes and ears and see some things. And then we need to bring it back, test it, talk about it, tweak it, test it again, and keep going. That's part of the process of overall organizational improvement. So if you're looking at a data governance process, that has to be a component of it anyway, to look for those hidden vulnerabilities, so that we're not always patting ourselves on the back, but we're looking at where we're going and what might be out there ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Really great points there. Absolutely. Your experiences of adding a lot of value to our thoughts and getting the directions there. So maybe quickly we'll move on to the second poll question to the audience. So maybe hopefully you're able to see the second poll question right now on your screen. Okay. So were any of your AI or analytics projects ever negatively impacted due to lack of adequate data governance? This is a question to the audience. Please make your appropriate selection so that we'll take the follow-up discussions accordingly. We'll give a couple of seconds. Okay, I think we are done now. Okay, and we'll see a result. Oh yes. So as per the result, it shows 71% of the attendees thinks that they have been negatively impacted because of the having not adequate data. That's obvious and very much true. So that brings to the next point there, maybe to Tom. Do you think having not a governance or a data governance in place, would it have any financial impact on the organizations?
Well, we talked about that inherent risk in unknown liability. What are our vulnerabilities and what we don't know? Then the other things too, the actual known data that's tied to short-term and long-term goals. We oftentimes think of strategic plan. We're going to be strategic and we're going to develop a 5-year plan. Well, today, if you're looking 5 years down the road and you think you know what's going to be happening, guess what? Things change so fast now. So you really do ultimately need a map. You need a roadmap, a long-term roadmap, but you need to be looking at those short-term things too. So when we're talking about things like risk, and there are risks on the side of compliance too. I mean, you have to collect data related to government entities and reporting and stockholders and trustees and everything. Those things need to be gathered. In university life, it was always accreditation. Well, that was great. Accreditation's great, and it's great to have it, but ultimately, you really need to know what is keeping students from graduating. You need to know why your students are leaving and they're no longer paying tuition. That's survivability. And then you need a long-term plan also. Your long-term plan in university life might be, how do we make sure that students get employed? Because they're asking us, teach us what we need to do to earn a living in most cases. Well, for most organizations, your customers, your people you're providing service to, they're asking you, improve my life. So we need to be thinking about things that help us to meet that mission. Not just say we're doing it, but actually do it.
Right.
Yes, and you're talking about what we need to know just to help us and run our business, and then also what we don't know that would help us. And so we often use the word effective in a generic sense, meaning that our project is good. But we can use a more meaningful use of effective to say, has your strategy or has what you're doing moved you towards your goals or your mission in a measurable way? And how to measure that. So in that term, a lot of times the term is organizational effectiveness is what that talks about. And if we apply organizational effectiveness to the data, is your company's data moving you toward you reaching your goals and your mission? And really, can you apply the question at the top level, at the division level, at the department level, and then also at the project level? So all the way throughout your organization. And looking at this and looking at how effective is data on your company, to get a kind of some big ideas, data in general, if you're an average point moving to a proficient point, you can increase your bottom line by about 20 to 25%. So your maturity goes up and your bottom line goes up 25%. If you're the Atlanta Braves in baseball in the 1990s and you go from worst to first, that can increase you about 3,000% or 30 times. So you're the worst to the premier 30 times. And then the other thing you got to notice is that risk is about twice as strong as actually the bottom line. So while you're increasing your bottom line, you're also decreasing risk by 40 to 50%. So data governance can have a large impact again on your mission and goals.
Great. Yep.
Thank you, Greg. And I like the increasing the bottom line part and the effectiveness. A fully functional data governance framework provides accountability across all leadership levels. Absence of data governance operational framework makes your business vulnerable to many forms of risk. Data breach, we have seen many data breach, and then also violation of several compliances, such as PCI, FERPA standards. A familiar example coming to my mind is about is yearly financial audit that everyone is familiar with it, which is everyone knows it because it has been traditionally done every year by all organizations. But similar to that is, I was 2 years ago, I was involved in a PCI compliance audits. I felt that was a well-planned audit, and later I realized it's a great investment for that organization. The audit helped to reveal and identify about 20-some violations that could have cost the business between $5,000 to $100,000 per month as fines. If a formal audit had taken place prior to that consulting engagement, the data governance framework prevents risk, eliminates vulnerabilities, and improves trust in the business and increases the bottom line up to 40%. Absolutely. Getting the data governance framework implemented should be part of strategic priority of every business and organization. I would also say that, with the busy schedules that many of the leadership and the team has, I would recommend an established IT consulting company to partner with you for that. So that way, that's what we did. And it really helped have a great report and find out all the details and step by step where we have to fix things. So I would recommend that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sorry. Absolutely. I mean, having financial implications tied up to governance, there are compliance level issues, and there are some regulatory level issues as well. And as soon as recently as last month in October, there was a fine raised by the federal government to one of the largest financial institute in the US, and the fine is about more than $300 million. So it's not that they never had a data governance; they had it, but they thought that they're improving. But it has to have an external eye to see it. So it's always the best to have that practice too. So we're almost we're hitting the top of the hour. I had so many points to discuss, but maybe I'll very quickly jump on to the next point, which is very relative to the recent times. How do you think, Greg, current situation is impacting the data governance, and how data governance can impact the current situation?
So that's really interesting, and looking at the efficiencies and increasing outcomes for product, service, and reducing costs. I think as I've been talking to Abraham, he's been talking to it as the perspective and looking at how it's accessible to the users. And Abraham, as you were seeing that, as you were starting your campaign really in around 2008, what were you seeing?
When we started the conversation, of course, we have a state initiative from the governor onwards and the chancellor onwards to focus on 3 major imperatives, which earlier Tom was mentioning. We call retention, progression, graduation, and that is what we need to address, which basically affordability and speed of graduation and getting the employment right for the students and reducing the debt on the students. So when having that initiative, that marching order from the state, it was easier for our president and the vice president Tom to really lead the charge, and so it made my job easier to get these steps forward, bringing everyone together. So and therefore building the awareness was an easy step for me through collaboration, which leadership has already initiated that.
So the nuts and bolts of that, Abraham, one thing I think you did very effectively, you made sure that we brought in every dean, which for I guess a business organization might be every vice president, every senior leader, and we sat down at the table. And really, you had already begun that work before the state level data governance initiative, and the question we asked them revolved around, what do you need to get better? And then the arguments we started a meeting and then an argument broke out. Well, my data says this, your data says that. And that's how you backed into the data governance thing. The other thing I think you did really well was you already had a viable data warehouse where we could actually effectively get data from multiple resources. Nowadays, that's not that big of a deal, but in 2010, that was a big deal because at that time, not many people were doing it. So I think you're to be commended for doing that work.
Thanks, Tom. And I may add, this position that we mentioned earlier, chief data officer or chief analytics officer or chief, data czar. And if a CIO is listening to this, I would recommend that CIO and the chief data officer should be a co-partners of this initiative. With that partnership, your implementation or any data projects become successful, and because the CDO, the chief data officer, will have an oversight of the quality of the data and that ownership, and also how he can help as a team permeate that awareness from top to bottom. And that really makes the adoption and embracing the data governance strategy very well and effective.
That and getting in all leadership early, and that means all leadership, and then having them go back and talk to the folks they work with. Those are if you don't do anything else, those two things, the chief data officer and involving everybody early.
Those are really very great insights and really great experience to share with us, and learning experience, of course, for the audience also. Maybe we are right now on the top of the hour. We'll use this time remaining to give the opportunity to audience to raise any questions if they have. So please, audience, if you have any questions, please write on to the question tab. So so we'll be happy to answer. Okay. So I could see some questions flowing in here, and meanwhile others type in the questions. So maybe this question is for Greg. How would the organization would know that they have a data governance, and is really awareness is important?
So if you're looking at,
can you repeat, Mahesh? I'm sorry, I missed something.
I'm saying there is a question from the audience. It says they already have a governance, but they don't know how to publish it.
Okay.
So kind of ways you can tell that you have good governance is that you see that the data is being shared across departments, and IT and the business aren't fighting over it, so different places are sharing it. You can see decreased frustration in the data processes, and then you can also see an increased use in the metrics. What I suggest you do at any point in time is pull out a framework, and it doesn't need to be a specific one. Mahesh, you mentioned the DAMA data management framework. That's a good one, and it helps you kind of understand what areas you need to manage or control. So you get an idea of what you need to manage and control. IT usually has the storage and software. The business intelligence or data analytics is going to do the access and analysis. Decision structures, if you have a data governance committee, or a chief data officer. Again, it's more important you have a central way to handle things and have a specific type of organization. And then you'll also probably have a group that's focusing on data standards and quality, and then data security. So those 5 areas come out, are the big areas out of that DAMA structure: the data storage, the data access, the decision structures, the data standards, and the data security. But I'd start there if I were starting.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great thought there. And I see another question.
Okay.
Yeah, Brian. You say something?
No, I mean, I echo what Greg said. A good data governance platform can help the organization, any small business, big business, any businesses, right? And to find, curate, analyze, prepare, and share data. And not only that, a more important thing to me is also I learned that the overall management of data becomes easier, and the data becomes ubiquitous, really, as mentioned earlier, and the relevancy of the data becomes more aware across the organization. The usability increases, integrity increases, and the trust increases, and the security of the enterprise therefore increases. So I just wanted to add that.
Absolutely. Those are the really good points. I do have another question, maybe to you, Abraham. So should the data governance should be developed internally, or should it be borrowed by the industry veterans?
And I feel Greg touched a little bit on this earlier. You know, there are several standards he mentioned, such as DAMA or Gardner. I mean, I like all of them. To me, if you're an organization that is really pressed to get things going, I would adopt one of those 2 standards, and you follow that guidelines. And at the same time, it would be great to have a partner, like a technology partner like Marlabs, who have done this before. And because your internal resources, I don't know, you have to weigh your resources that is available. If somebody wants to really start looking at this and get learning going parallelly, it may take longer for you. So I would suggest that you have a partner come along with you at this, and that way you also learn, your team also learn parallelly and get this implemented at a faster pace, because time is not on your side. Because as we all know, data is coming huge, the exponentially growing, and your CEO or the chief operating officer wants to keep up with the trends that is happening in the market to increase the bottom line. So I would suggest a good partnership is great, and for adopting something that already developed is the right thing to do for your faster data governance framework.
Thank you. That's a really good point there. So we are on the top of the hour now. There are other questions also. We would take it up offline, and we'll be honestly responding to those all questions. And at this moment, from Marlabs to the panel, it is very appreciative, and thank you very much for taking your time and participating on this discussion. It was really a learning, and until we meet again, definitely we'll keep in touch. Thank you very much for your time, and for the participant, appreciate your time spending with us, and hope you have learned additional things from whatever you wanted to catch up with on data governance. And will we continue such sessions going forward? And please visit our website www.marlabs.com and reach out for us for any technology advice you are looking for. We'll be very happy to extend our help. And until we meet again, thank you very much. Stay safe and happy holidays. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mahesh. It was a pleasure to join you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.